Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody again. My name is Bill Hodak. I'm the Director of Product Marketing at New Relic, and thank you all for taking time out of your day to join today's webinar about our newest product that is in beta called New Relic Insights. Today we're going to spend the beginning of the webinar going through some slides. I think it's important given that this product is different in many ways from the products that you're used to using with New Relic. I'd like to sort of set the stage and kind of help you understand why we've developed this product and how you'll be able to use it to solve real problems in your organizations. And then of course we'll spend a good portion of the time going through a product demo. I've got a use case that I'll use to go into New Relic Insights and solve answer some real business questions. And then we will open it up for Q&A. Hopefully we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. I've got folks from our engineering department on the webinar as well to answer some of the more technical questions. So let's go ahead and dive in. Let me quickly just say, to ask the questions, you should have a questions panel in your GoToWebinar application, so feel free to submit questions there directly. And we will use that to do the Q&A towards the end of today's webinar. So to start things off, it's a little bit on the marketing side, but I think it's important to understand why we developed this real-time analytics product. And the general thesis is that no matter what you do in your company or within your organization, you probably want to be data-driven. Perhaps you feel like you're data-driven today to make better decisions and to make you perform your job better, but you probably want to be even more data-driven. I know that that's true for me in my job. And oftentimes the challenge feels like I can't be data-driven because I don't think that the data is there. It's not available. But the reality is that the data is there for you to be data-driven. The problem has really just been that you haven't been able to ask it the questions. And so let's sort of figure out why that is the case. And let's sort of start by going through sort of a brief mock example here, which is, how do you today in your business get questions answered about how your software is being used, how your customers are engaging with your software, and how your business is performing? How do you get those questions answered today? And really the bottom line is how long does it take you to get the answers to those questions? Oftentimes, in many organizations, the individual that has the question doesn't necessarily have access to the data to get those answers. And so who do they go to get those questions answered? And many times you have to realize that person that they go to, which is oftentimes a software developer, it impacts them, it interrupts their flow. And so really, how does that impact them? And the reality is that it impacts them a lot. Again, the software developer is typically the one that has access to the data, whether it's another engineer that has a question that they want answered, or whether it's someone in marketing or sales or an executive. And the engineering team is swamped. So they typically respond to these requests for data or for reports with, when do you need it? How do I fit this into my current schedule and project timelines? And of course, the answer from the business is usually, I would love to have the answer now. And so going back to that theme that the data is there, the reality is that your software has historically had all of the data. It's just been really difficult and oftentimes slow and oftentimes very expensive to get the answers from your software. For companies that have been able to make the investment, they've built out really complex BI systems built upon multiple software products, databases, ETL tools, dashboarding and visualization tools, but they still haven't been able to really answer the ad hoc real-time questions that you get from the business. They typically are delivering reports on a nightly basis where the data is already pretty much out of date. And if the questions that you're asking require data that isn't already being collected by your existing BI system, then it's usually a a lengthy, complex, engineering process to get that data added. And then you've got other organizations who, because of the cost and complexity, haven't invested in traditional BI systems, and they're at a even almost a bigger disadvantage because they have to query to get their answers. They have to query their live production databases, which oftentimes puts a negative impact on their production applications. And so what you really want to have is a real-time conversation with your data. And so to be truly data-driven, it needs to be very quick, and you want to be able to talk directly with your data. And so that is exactly what we're trying to do with New Relic Insights. And to have that good conversation, you need to be able to get answers immediately, and you want to be able to access real-time data. So historically, if you want to do ad hoc analysis against data, against the data that you have available, oftentimes it's against a snapshot of data that was collected from yesterday, and oftentimes it's running a query that can run for hours, if not longer. And so there is no real-time conversation. It's not interactive. It's I ask a question, and many hours later I get my answer. And so these were really the core, I would say, sort of problems and areas of improvement that we felt like we could add value, and how we've decided to build New Relic Insights. And so first, let's talk about what is New Relic Insights. And what we're calling it is we're calling it a real-time analytics platform. It's a platform for a variety of reasons. Number one is that we are collecting billions, if not more, events directly from inside your live production software using the New Relic agents that you're likely already using for our APM products. We then store those events, trillions of them oftentimes, in a purpose-built, custom-built, schemaless big data database that we store in the cloud and manage on your behalf. And then we use our intuitive query language and advanced presentation abilities to allow you to visualize your questions and answers using simple query language and simple dashboards. So those are really the three core sort of components, underlying technology components that make up New Relic Insights. And now we're going to go through each one of those in just a little bit more detail. The first one is how do you get data into New Relic Insights? And this is actually really, really important to understand. If you've ever been involved in a data warehousing project, getting data out of your software applications and out of your other sources can be quite complex. We've made it extremely simple. In fact, we collect data directly from your software, again, using the agents that are already installed. So in many cases, you don't have to do anything. The data is already collected, and it happens in real time. If you have other data that lives outside of your software, that is not a problem. We have an API that you can send JSON formatted data to us, so we can ingest data directly through the API as well. And again, one of the really, really interesting things about New Relic Insights is that if you're already using New Relic's agents, we are collecting data, your APM data already, and storing it in the Insights database. And so the first time you log into the product, you will already have a host of information that you can use to start doing your real-time analytics. One of the important things here to talk about is what we collect out of the box. And these are every page view event if you're using our New Relic browser and real user monitoring product. And we also collect every single transaction that happens on your back-end application server. So every single page view and every single transaction is automatically collected and sent to New Relic Insights and available to you out of the box without having to do anything, as long as you already have our agent installed. And then, as I mentioned, we built a new database to support New Relic Insights, and we like to call it a supercluster, and we built it as a supercluster so you don't have to. Again, this is a cloud-hosted part of our SaaS platform. So Insights is backed by this purpose-built, highly scalable, it's an event database that's designed for real-time big data. Some of the key attributes of that is that you can add new types of data. So as I mentioned, we automatically collect page view and transaction events, but you can add new types of data on the fly with our flexible and schemaless database. So there's really no need to plan ahead. A quick example of why that's beneficial, if you're familiar with database administration at all, typically if you decided that you wanted to add a new column to your data warehouse, you would have to go through a set of database, DDL, database definition language scripts to add the column and load the data. With New Relic Insights, you just automatically start collecting the new data type, and we automatically add it to our database. So there is no need to add columns or new tables using SQL syntax. And then lastly, one of the core sort of drivers of building our own database was to make it extremely fast without requiring users and developers to know in advance what questions they wanted to ask, what queries they wanted to run. And so we don't require any indexing. No matter what query you run, no matter what question you ask, answers are delivered fast. It doesn't matter if you don't need to index certain attributes or columns. Everything, no matter how you ask the question, is delivered instantly. Which leads into how do you get the data out of New Relic Insights? And the answer is, one answer is you get really fast answers. And we'll talk a little bit more about the performance in a minute, but one of the things that we really wanted to do was make getting data out of New Relic Insights easy. And so we've built our own query language called New Relic Query Language, or NRQL, which is very, very similar to SQL or SQL. And it's just been slightly modified so that it is easier to ask analytics types of questions. The NRQL delivers answers to your questions, typically scanning millions or hundreds of millions of events in seconds, oftentimes milliseconds. So we're not talking about hours, days, or weeks. If you're not a SQL expert or just new to NRQL, one of my favorite features, and I'll show it in the product demo, is our autocomplete feature. So as you're typing your NRQL commands, your NRQL statements, we automatically complete things like the attribute names, the event types, the types of functions that are available to you, and the different clauses in your syntax. So it's really kind of learn as you go if you're not an expert. If you are an expert, it just makes writing out NRQL statements even faster because you don't have to type out each word. And then finally, you can take your data to go or integrate it with your application. So we have APIs, just like you're allowed to, just like you can insert data with our APIs, you can also select and pull data out of Insights using our APIs, and we'll deliver you a JSON formatted data in real time. And then finally, we talked about NRQL and using that language to get the data out of Insights. But what's really, really interesting is that with each NRQL query that you run, you get automatically get a beautiful data visualization. And this is really by design. It's to make you be able to produce visualizations that make you help you understand the data that you're querying really, really quickly and easily. So every NRQL query automatically comes with a data visualization. You can save those queries as your favorites, or you can create dashboards and add those queries with their visualizations to those dashboards. And they are automatically updated in real time. One of the neat things about the product, and again I'll show this in the product demo, is sort of the way that you interact with the product and with the dashboards and the visualizations. They really allow you to sort of customize the charts and graphs by just making minor modifications to the query. And so even non-technical users with limited knowledge of SQL can take an existing dashboard or visualization and modify it to just iterate and explore the data. And this is, again, a really, really important aspect of New Relic Insights, and I'll touch on that in a little bit more in a little bit. And so I do want to talk just briefly, because there's a lot of big data products and solutions out there in the market today, and really what makes New Relic Insights different. Really, there's a handful of things. Number one is that New Relic Insights was tuned for super fast queries against real-time data. Right now, we are essentially returning almost all of our queries in less than 500 milliseconds, with the average response time of 100 milliseconds. These are really fast queries. And the nice thing about it is that you don't have to be a data scientist or a Hadoop expert or make any significant investments in a Hadoop-like infrastructure in order to collect, store, and query this data, and query it as quickly as you can. As I've already touched on, I think one of a huge differentiator for us is that it's extremely fast to get started. Out of the box, you have your APM data available to you to start sort of using the product, getting familiar with the query language, building dashboards. And then once you're comfortable with that, you can start adding additional business level attributes or other software specific attributes to append to the Insights database to be able to answer additional types of questions, whether they're business questions, they're product management questions, they're development questions. It's very easy to add additional attributes out of the box. And then finally, as I just sort of touched on, I think as you use the product, you'll really understand how important this becomes. It's really the iterative nature of the product that lets you think differently. It allows you to be agile. To explore this a little bit more, I kind of go back to what I said in the beginning, which was, typically with traditional solutions, if you had a question that you wanted answered and you ran a query, oftentimes that question might be, may not be accurate, but it takes 2 to 3 hours for you to get the answer back. And so when you get that answer, you sort of accept that was the answer to your question. If you have a database or an analytics platform like Insights where you are able to get answers to your questions and your queries in milliseconds, it really drives iterative thinking. So as you get an answer to a specific question, it will spawn potentially another question in your head that allows you to kind of drill down more and more and get you to be becoming more data-driven. So let's kind of walk through a PowerPoint version example of that. I'll also demonstrate that in the demo in a few minutes. But just so you understand sort of that power of the iteration, let's just walk through an example. So we've got this individual. He wants to know how many widgets he sold in the last hour. He can write a NERQL query and get an answer back in milliseconds that says that they've sold 100 widgets. Typically, maybe to get that type of an answer, it would have taken an hour. He got that question back in just a few milliseconds. And so as soon as they see that question, this particular person would like to know more information, like, well, now that I know I sold 100 widgets, where did I sell these widgets? Which countries did I sell the most in? And then once I know which country, maybe I'd like to know which state, maybe I'd like to know which city. And all of these are iterative questions that I'm asking on top of my original question, right? So initially, I just wanted to know how many products had I sold, how many widgets had I sold. But I got the answer so quickly that it made me start thinking of additional questions. I start drilling down and getting those answers really quickly as well. And I ask one final question, which is, I'd like to know how many sales, I would like to know the sales breakdown by gender. And so I can see when I get this response back that the majority of my sales are happening in San Francisco and by men. And as a marketer, I want to be able to leverage that information to take action immediately. And so by being able to drill down from just a very high level question of how many products sold to exactly sort of the demographic information about who's buying or not buying your product allows you to take sort of immediate action to improve your business or to improve your application. And so in this case, the marketing team may want to launch a promotion focused on women in San Francisco to boost sales. So this is obviously a very high level and generic example, but it's really applicable across, I think, different users in an organization. This could be the same type of question about, feature adoption and things of that nature that really allows you to kind of drill down into very specific answers and information very rapidly. All right, so let's go ahead and transition from the slides into a product demo. All right. So I am logged into New Relic Insights, and this is the first screen you would see the first time you logged in. It actually shows you some real live information about your application, and actually invites you to kind of take a tour of some of the key capabilities of the product. For example, the types of data that we collect, how you add additional types of data. I'm not going to walk through that tutorial today. You can see it's sort of three quick screens to get you familiar with the product. Instead, I'm going to go directly into directly using the product. The first thing I want to do is explain to you the use case or the mock application and scenario that this demonstration is built on. So sort of similar to the PowerPoint example, what we have here is a sample e-commerce application. The underlying sort of business problem or that we're trying to solve is how well a particular promotion and product line are doing. And so what we've done is, the idea is that we're launching a new product line on our e-commerce store in the next week, but we wanted to test out some sample marketing campaigns, and we also wanted to see which products within our product line would be most successful. So a week before the big product line launch, we've sent out some marketing emails and are monitoring the adoption and conversions of that particular test group. So the first thing I've done is clicked on this link here, which is the Explore link, and you'll see that by default I have these two event types as I mentioned before. So I've got my page view event type, which is collecting every page view that's happening on my application. It's got different attributes like APM attributes like backend duration, the country code where the person is hitting our site, how long the total transaction took, and additional information. I also have my transaction event, and this has additional information, more focused on the backend app, but you'll see that it also has some sort of different attributes that obviously don't come out by default. So I've added these as custom attributes. So I've got an attribute for the marketing campaign, for the product line, whether or not they've purchased, and other attributes sort of specific to my particular application. And so you'll see I'm clicking on one of my dashboards, and let's see, here we go. And I've already built out a set of dashboards to monitor my campaign. And what I'd like to do in this particular webinar is kind of go through the actual steps of building this by myself. So you can see right now I've got the total number of visitors on my site. I can click on this to see the query that's delivering me that result. I can want to break it down and see how many visitors on my site are actually coming from the campaign that I ran, the test campaign. I can see the total visitors of my campaign, total visitors broken down by campaign, and a bunch of other additional information. So what I'm going to do is actually create a brand new dashboard and try to build out as much information as I can. And kind of watch how quickly one is able to sort of build interesting insights and then iterate on the data that they get. So some of this will be kind of similar to what you just saw in the dashboard I've already built, but I'm going to start out with sort of a basic question, which is I just want to know how many people are on my site right now. And so as you can see, I've got this autocomplete feature working for me. It's automatically sort of showing me the different keywords and functions, and I want to look at just since 5 minutes ago. And so I'm going to run this query, and you'll see that I have about 4,000 transactions or individuals on my site right now. This query processed 87,000 events in just 12 milliseconds. So I'm going to say total visitors and add to this dashboard. And now I've got what we call the billboard widget. As I mentioned before, I'd like to narrow this down to see exactly how my campaign is going. So what I've done is, rather than having to type that query from scratch, I've just clicked on this link. It produces the NERQL code for me. And now I'm going to add a where clause where let's see, I think it's product line equals, and you'll see it even actually auto-populates the values. And if I click on that, you'll see that I have about 1,000 people that are actually part of my campaign. So let's put campaign visitors and add that to this dashboard. So in just a couple of minutes, I've gone, and I'll remind you that I'm in marketing. I'm not a database expert, but I've gone from, finding out exactly how many people are on my site to how many people that are on my site that are actually part of the campaign that I'm interested in. Now that I know that, I might be interested in seeing what products these folks are purchasing. And so I'm going to go ahead and add another clause, which we call the facet clause, which allows me to group my query results by various attributes. In this case, I wanted to see which products are being purchased, and so I can automatically visualize that as a pie chart. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a title of purchases by product and add it to my dashboard. So again, I've gone just from, in a matter of minutes, to sort of leveraging a relatively easy query and expanding that to getting down to actually the products that are being purchased from my test campaign. So it's pretty clear looking here that blouses are about 41% of all purchases are blouses, and 30% are skirts. And we've had a total of 350 transactions in just the last 5 minutes. Now, I might want to change that. I might want to facet that by a different attribute, because one of the things that I was interested in was knowing which marketing campaign was the most successful, so that when we launch this product line to the rest of our customers, that we use the most successful marketing campaign. So this time around, I'm going to facet it by something else. In this case, a marketing campaign. I'm going to go ahead and see the results there really quickly. I could see that as a pie chart, but I'm running these campaigns over time. And so I'd like to sort of visualize that in a different way. So I'm going to add this time series clause, and I'm going to go with I'll let it automatically set up the time series for me. And I would like to look at it over a longer period of time than 5 minutes, so I'm going to look at it from 1 hour ago. All right, so now you can see I've got a line chart. My query processed about 90,000 events over in 64 milliseconds. I can also view it as an area chart, which is actually probably going to be a little bit easier for me. But now that I'm looking at this, I'm wondering if maybe 1 hour ago isn't enough time for me to get, there we go, I've got some spikes. So I can see that I have some spikes here. This is probably when the marketing team actually started sending out some of the emails. So this looks more interesting to me. So I'm going to save this and look at purchases by campaign. And now I've got this nice area chart. So I'm going to actually go in and edit it because I'd like to see a larger version of that. And there you go. So as I'm looking at some of this information, I can sort of start to make some basic conclusions here. Number one, I think I know which of the products in my product line are going to be the most successful, the blouse and the skirt. And I can see, looking at my purchases by campaign, that email version 2 seems to be the most successful. And it's probably going to be the marketing campaign that we're going to want to actually go with when we launch the product line. But I might want to get even some more information. So now that I know email version 2 is the most successful, I actually want to see if that correlates. Does email version 2 also have the same sort of purchase patterns as product purchase patterns as I have here, which is looking at looking at all campaigns. So I've got my product line. I'm going to add in my where clause, and I'm going to add another clause here which says marketing campaign equals email. There it goes, auto completing for me. And so now I can see I'm just going to leave this as a table, email version or campaign to purchases, and add that to this dashboard. And so now I can see that blouses and skirts, just like for the overall campaigns, again, are the same sort of high volume or the same top purchases. And I'm kind of curious if that's the same across all campaigns, right? Maybe email version 1 or 3 isn't as successful, but maybe it's really good at selling pants or shorts. So let's just go ahead and sort of quickly tweak these queries to get the same information but for different campaigns. So this is campaign 1 purchases. And looks like it's pretty much the same results, although there's a few more purchases for shorts from the first campaign. And then let's go ahead and add in campaign 3, which is the last campaign that we have, and we've got let's see, what is campaign 3 purchases. All right, so that's confusing to me. So I don't have them in the right order, so I'm just going to swap these guys around, put 1, 2, and 3. Oops. My wireless mouse just lost connection. There we go. Okay, so now I'm kind of looking at each campaign and seeing which one was the most successful at selling certain products. And so one thing that I'm seeing here that sort of stands out, and I could visualize these in different ways. I'm just doing tabular format to give you kind of an idea of the different data visualizations available. But clearly, campaign 3, which is actually our worst performing campaign overall, is doing a very good job at selling shorts, whereas the other campaigns are not doing that good of a job at selling shorts. So as a marketer, what I might want to do is, if shorts are an important part of our product line, try to analyze, what about that particular email campaign was driving the higher, fewer visitors and fewer purchases overall. Why was it driving more purchases in shorts, and seeing if I can combine that into my overall marketing campaign to get a better adoption across the product line. So that is a quick demo of the product and kind of the iterative nature of me going from sort of understanding just who's on my site all the way down to who's purchasing individual products based on different campaigns. And so I hope you enjoyed sort of seeing that demo. And while I realize you're all not e-commerce working for e-commerce company, it's a good way to sort of, I think, an application that we all understand. To just kind of get a general feel for how you would use this product, for your particular business. One thing I didn't do, and I should have done earlier, was talk a little bit more about the events, because I want to make sure that you understand sort of how our database works. I assume that most people are familiar with sort of traditional relational databases, and so I just want to draw a few comparisons so that you understand kind of what you're working with here. So when you're clicked in the Data Explorer, you'll see that this is the list of event types. An event type is essentially equivalent to a table in a relational database. We consider them event types, but this would essentially be, page view would be a table in a relational database. And then what we do is we talk about attributes. And so each one of these would normally be considered columns in a relational database, and we call them attributes. And each row that what you would call in a relational database is a specific event. So we kind of go from event type, which is like a table, to attributes, which are like columns, and then events themselves, which are like individual rows in a relational database. So hopefully that just makes it a little bit more clear. I meant to have this set up, so bear with me 1 second. I did want to show just a couple of things at the code level, so you can actually see how I added some of the custom attributes into my application, into my transaction event. So as I mentioned, a lot of these attributes themselves are here by default. They just come based on the data that we're already collecting for your New Relic APM installation. Things like duration and application name, and these are the names of the individual URLs or method calls, the host. But then you have things like, let's see, where am I? Then you have the additional attributes that I was showing, which had like product name, product line, purchase, product name, and things like that. And so I wanted to just show you how easy it is to get that additional data into New Relic Insights by just looking at, this is sort of the mock application that I have running. So this happens to be a Java application. And so I've imported this library from New Relic, and then all I have to do is run new relic.add_custom_parameter, and it automatically sends that information to New Relic Insights. So that was all the code that I needed to add to my application in order to get that additional, in my case, sort of business metrics around how my e-commerce campaign was working. And so assuming your application already has a lot of the attributes that you're interested in because they're part of your software already, it's very, very simple to just add this one line of code per attribute to get a ton more value out of New Relic Insights. The other thing I wanted to talk about is custom events. So you'll see here, if we go back to our data explorer, that there are two types of events. These are the ones that that you get out of the box. But as I talked about in my presentation, you also have the ability to ingest different types of data. So different types of data are additional attributes to these existing events, but you also have the ability to create your own events. And that's really simple to do. You can do it within your application, or you can do it outside of your application. In this example, I'm going to just show you it's outside of the application. I'm just going to use a shell script to insert some data. But you'll see here that I've got some JSON formatted text here. I've got an event type. This will be the new event that shows up called shopping cart. I've got a customer ID, cart amount, customer gender, total purchases. And you'll see that this will show up as one individual event, and these will be the attributes of my event type shopping cart. I'm going to add a second event or row, and what you'll notice here is that this particular event actually has a new attribute called customer name that didn't exist in the other in the initial event type, right? And so this is just to highlight how easy it is to add sort of new types of data. It's that schemaless aspect of the New Relic Insights that makes it so powerful. So I have a shell script here that that basically shows you that I'm just going to cat this JSON file, use a curl command. I've got my API key and a particular URL, and I should automatically get those new custom events showing up in my data explorer. So let me refresh. So there you go. So you'll see I've got my shopping cart, and I have the two events, one of them having the customer name and one of them not having the customer name. So you can see, if you're familiar with JSON, it's very, very, very easy to add additional events to New Relic Insights and bring in sort of different sorts of data that maybe don't necessarily live within a page view or an application transaction. So that concludes the demo portion of this webinar, and we have about 20 minutes that I'd like to go ahead and open it up for Q&A. So let me go ahead, and I'm going to get my webinar dashboard up during the Q&A so we can see how things are going. And just give me a minute here to sort of sort out some of these questions. So one of the questions is this going to be recorded? Yes, we are recording this webinar. We will post it online and send you all an email with the link. The next question is, will Insights be free to current subscribers once released, or a licensed option? So currently New Relic Insights is in beta. If you're an existing customer of ours and you've received an email invitation, you currently have access to New Relic Insights, including 1 week's worth of data and unlimited use of the product. We're still working on when we're going to bring the new when we're going to bring the product to market and as general availability, but there will be additional licensing to use New Relic Insights. Another great question here is, do we need to be running the latest agents for Insights to work? Well, yes and no. It sort of depends. I would go ahead. I would recommend visiting the Insights documentation so it's newrelic.com/docs. There's an Insights section, and it'll talk to you about, and it'll list out the minimum agent versions. I don't have them off the top of my head. Then you don't necessarily have to have the latest, but you have to have a pretty recent version of the agent so that it's already sending data to us. But I would recommend getting on the latest version if possible, because those have the latest capabilities. Let's see. Okay. The next question I have is, what overhead does this level of monitoring add? You mentioned that it collects data in real time, and I was wondering what performance issue that would cause on my servers. I probably can answer that, but I'm going to go ahead and turn that over to you, Andrew, and see if you want to talk about overhead. And don't forget to unmute.
Yeah, yes, that's what I just did.
We got you.
It doesn't have much more overhead than our existing agents. You're just adding a little more information, and then we're sending it off to Insights. I wouldn't worry about it.
Great. Let's see. The next question is, if we do not have browser monitoring, just using a Java app agents, will we still get any data? So the answer is yes, you will get data if you're not using the browser monitoring. You just, when you come to explore your data, you will not see this page view event. And so out of the box, you will not see all you will see is a transaction event. And so you will just get, you won't be able to, I would recommend using the browser monitoring product because it gives you kind of a whole new level of visibility in terms of how people are actually engaging with your site. But it is not a requirement. You will get data just by having the Java agent running inside your app. So let's see here. I'm just reading these questions as they come in. So it says, when you say you're already storing transactions, what part of data is being stored? Some of our data is proprietary, so we wouldn't want that on your servers. Okay, so no problem. Yeah, by default, we're just collecting actually a subset of the data that we already collect as part of our APM product. So we're just mostly collecting performance information about specific sort of URLs or transactions or controllers. So we're not collecting any sensitive data whatsoever. Let's see. Let's see. It says, is there an API to have an easy import for Google Analytics data? I haven't looked specifically at how you get data out of Google Analytics, but as I showed you just in that last example, you can ingest any JSON formatted data as a custom event. So presumably you can probably export your Google Analytics data and format it in JSON, and then you could insert it directly into New Relic Insights. So the answer to that, I believe, is yes. Again, another sort of similar question. It says, what types of data can you query from your apps? Is it just page views and transactions? I think I've answered that. So I would answer that sort of in two ways. Like, one is, yes, you can create custom events, as I just showed you, and that's a different way to query data from outside of your apps. But I would also highlight that it also is really, really powerful to add the custom attributes to the existing page view and transaction events, depending on your use case, of course. But that is my entire example that I did with creating this dashboard was based on just using the two events that came out of the box, and just by adding custom attributes to those events, as I showed you, just by adding those that one line of code per attribute, So like you can see in this particular NERCL statement, I'm just using the default transaction event. I'm able to limit it to 5 minutes based on the default data. And then I've added, I'm using one custom attribute here to limit my results to just a specific product line. And again, with each one of these queries, they are all based on the existing event types. I'm just using custom attributes to provide a different view to drive sort of deeper into those individual events. But obviously, as I showed and we've discussed a couple of times, you can easily add custom attributes either directly from within your software or outside of your software like I just showed. A question here is, can you query over 3 months back of data? Currently, no. As part of the beta, we're limiting it to 1 week's worth of data, but we'll be unveiling different when the product becomes generally available. We'll have different data retention policies. Let's see here. Do you have the ability to have stage queries or library of queries that we can give quick names to? Yes, I get sort of into using the dashboard, so I didn't even show that feature, but yes, you can actually, so I'm going to come back to query here, and let's just say I want to do a unique count of session from page view since 5 minutes ago, and I'm going to compare with 1 week ago. Okay, so my application currently has 996 unique sessions, and that's down 62% from last week. So I can either save this and add it to a dashboard, or I can just click favorite, and it automatically becomes a favorite in my queries. And you'll see here, when I'm in the actual query panel, that not only do I have a history of all the queries that I've run, but I also have the tab here that has the favorites. So I've saved 2 favorites, and so these will automatically show up. So yes, you can favorite queries and not have to necessarily add them to a dashboard. There's a question about adding custom metrics for custom .NET DLLs. That's certainly beyond my scope. I don't know, Andrew, if that's something that you can answer.
Not directly. I'm not a .NET person, but the custom parameter APIs that the agents have are the way to get information out of your app code.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so it's just similar that I showed when I showed my Java example. There's the ability to, for every language that we support, including .NET and Ruby, there are the same types of APIs available to add custom parameters or attributes and have them sent directly to New Relic Insights. Let's see here. Let's see. It says, so here's a question that says, we run multiple pure AJAX apps. How do you classify an AJAX call, not a page view? Is it a transaction? I will let you answer that one, Andrew, if you can.
Yeah, so you won't see too many useful page views because that's just a full page load. But all of the backend transactions that are driving your front end, you'll see that. And Insights is a very heavily client-side app, so we use that to monitor ourselves. But stay tuned on that. I wouldn't be surprised if we make things better.
Okay. Let's see. So there's a question. Let's see. So there was a question of how did you get product line in there? Did you use the insert API? I'll just show that again. I think that question probably came in before I showed my sample app, but I'll just show it again in order to make sure that I address that question. So this is just a Java application that just generates some fake load, but this was it. So in this particular case, I hard-coded the actual name for product line. In the other cases, product name, marketing campaign, purchase, and purchase int are actual, variables that are in my application. They were parameters that were passed in through the page view event, etc. So I just automatically, these are the attribute names that are the first part of the add custom parameters code, and then the actual value. So it's just a key value, attribute name and then the value. So that is all I did in order to get product line in there and the other attributes. It says, so here it says, I must admit the dashboard feature is amazing. Maybe we'll just set up a TV with New Relic logged in. Or what is that permalink in the bottom right-hand corner? Do you have to log in with this to use this permalink? I'm actually not that familiar with the permalink feature. Can you address that, Andrew?
Yeah, permalink is so you can lock the dashboard to the current time you're looking at it. So if you send that link to somebody, they'll see the exact same data that you saw instead of what's up to date.
Okay, I got it. So the permalink feature. Sorry, hit the wrong button there. So let's go back to. So I guess I would say a couple of things. So one thing is when I created this dashboard, I didn't show you this, but I made it private just to me. I can also make it visible to others in my account, and I can make it editable by others in my account. So there's different levels of security. So that sort of partially answers your question. And then the permalink itself is just a way to sort of, I guess, take a sort of a snapshot, sort of to freeze the dashboard at a certain particular point in time so that you don't sort of have to go back and find those results later. So I'm going to return to current there. So here was an example. Or a question to show an example of adding the custom business attributes. I think I've done that, so I'm not going to do that again. Let's see here. It says, any plans on a more detailed predefined dashboard for web analytics? Andrew, do you have any thoughts on that, or are there any sort of canned dashboards that you foresee as kind of having available out of the box for different use cases like web analytics?
I can't really speak to that, sorry.
Sure, no problem. So here's a great question, and it says this seems to be geared more towards answering business questions. Can we use Norqual to interrogate performance-related data? So the answer is absolutely. I happen to use a business use case. Andrew, you can maybe answer that a little bit. I'll just maybe try to show that a little bit. So you can do like percentile backend duration 50, 98 from. Oops. So my app is not a good example because it's a fake app and there's really only one there's only one URL and one servlet. So I guess the answer is yes. You can use it not just for business reasons, but for diving into sort of application performance as well. And I don't know if you want to talk to that use case in particular. I'll just add one more thing before I turn it over to you, which is that not only can you do I would say other things that you can do that I guess are business related, but I consider more sort of answering questions about your software or maybe product management and developer use cases, which is sort of what features are being used and by who and how often, and kind of helping you optimize the actual sort of user interaction and engagement with your app, and knowing whether how popular certain features are, and in some ways you could almost do A/B testing and things of that nature with the product as well. So there's really a whole host of use cases. I think they're almost limitless. It's based on what data based on the data that you can get into Insights, either using our custom events or custom attributes. Andrew, anything more specific you would say about using Insights for more sort of application performance tuning use cases?
So our existing APM product is invaluable for diagnosing problems at an aggregate level. But if you're trying to track down issues specific to one user, or you're trying to figure out why things are slow in particular cases, having the ability to filter in Insights has been invaluable for us.
Yep, that's great, and that brings up a good point. I mean, I think that is very, very true. That was sort of one of the use cases that I thought about as well, but from like a developer perspective and from a customer support perspective, is really being able to kind of monitor. If you are tracking as a custom attribute, a user ID or username for your software, is being able to really kind of dig deep into their experience by just being able to write queries specifically about limiting it to their user ID, and seeing what pages they're using, what response times they're getting, those types of things for sure. It says, what languages other than Java can be used to add custom attributes? I believe the answer is all languages. Is that? Except for, I believe we are not supporting Node at this point with Insights. Is that right, Andrew? So in terms of in terms of the ability to add custom attributes, yes, that's all languages support that. As of now, our Node.js agent is not sending data to New Relic Insights, but that's something that's being worked on actively. Let's see. Another question here is there an additional cost to use the beta? No, it is. If you've received an invitation to the beta, there's no additional cost. We appreciate you looking at the product and providing us with feedback. Let's see. So it says, so we don't have a lot, we only have about one more minute. It says, I don't quite understand the question. The question is whether or not I can show a purchase query with choices, and I'm not sure I understand that, but I think the follow-on question was, is there documentation talking about the options such as facet and time series? And the answer is, of course, yes. If you go to our newrelic.com/docs section, docs website, there's a whole section of documentation around the NERQL language and the various capabilities. It talks about facets, time series, and a whole host of other things. We also have a lot of sort of resources to help you get started using the product. So if you go to newrelic.com/insights, which is our website, and scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a resources section, and we have things like a getting started guide, which is really, really helpful to just kind of get you familiar with the product. Obviously, the documentation is invaluable, but if you also wanted some additional materials, visit newrelic.com/insights, and we have things like getting started guides and other materials for you. The last thing I'll mention is our forum. If you I don't know if I know the URL to the forum, so there is a forum available, so you can kind of engage with New Relic employees as well as other customers and users of New Relic Insights. So I think that is actually, you can see actually in the product itself, there's a link to the support forum. So discuss.newrelic.com. There you go, discuss.newrelic.com, and then actually there's a direct link within the product as well. And so it looks like we are already 1 minute past the hour. I realize that I did not get to every question, and I apologize for that. But I do want to thank everybody for taking the time today to participate in today's webinar. I really hope that if you are part of the beta, that you go out and give it a try. It's really an amazing product. It's a lot of fun to use. It's a bit addictive. So I really look forward to you all providing us with feedback in terms of what you like, how you're using the product, and how you think it's going to help your company going forward. So thank you again, and take care.